Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. Today I want to go all in on the pattern sequencer and how this can make for more performative, varied, and just fun live sets. So today we'll go over how to play tracks live with the pattern sequencer, the difference between pattern chaining and playing the patterns manually, and in which instances you would want to do one over the other. Then we'll discuss transitions between tracks and their patterns. Finally, we'll discuss how to use chromatic mode on top of the patterns to add more interactivity and performance to your set. Timestamps are in the description. Let's get into it. Okay, so before we get into all of the ways you can use it for live performance, if you're new to the SP404, I'm going to do a quick overview of the pattern sequencer. And if you're familiar with the pattern sequencer, skip to this timestamp to get into all of the performance methods. If you want to go to the pattern sequencer, first you just go to pattern select, hit record, and choose an empty bank. It will flash. You can choose the BPM with this knob. You can change the length here. And you can do the quantize over on the right. And you can change the quantize with this. You can get some shuffle. Now this is if you're doing it in real time. Let's just change. 7 bars is a bit of a weird bar. So we're going to do, let's say 2 bars. We'll keep it easy. We'll do a grid of 16 with about 50% to start it. And I'm going to turn on the metronome, hitting Shift 9. Now the pattern's going. All we had to do is hit record for that. Let's find some drums. So you can hear it quantized it. But what if I want to undo something? You can just undo all of it by hitting Shift Undo. So let's do that again. Stop recording by just hitting exit when it's recording. And then what you're gonna wanna do is hit Shift Record. And now we're in TR Rec mode. And you can go in and edit the sequence per sample pad. So like 13 is the drums here. So let's just fix all of that. We're gonna fix all those hi-hats. And if you want more with the snares and all that, you can do start time, shuffle, all that. Now we just like completely changed the pattern, but that's the power of TR Rec mode. Now we can get back into real time by just hitting record. Hit this to go to rehearsal. Okay, so now let's say we like that little riff. I can hit record and just put it in. And if you wanted to change the quantize, you could. So that's a very quick cursory look at pattern sequencing. And then if you want to make duplicates and alternates, which we are going to talk about, all you have to do is hit copy, move this. And if you only want specific parts, hit remain. Find the pads that you want to move over. So here's the melodic ones. Here's the drums. Just the drums is all I want. Hit copy. And now you've got just the drums. That's going to be important in a moment. So we've gone over the pattern sequencer. We took a quick look at how to use it and all that, but now let's talk about why you might want to use pattern sequences live compared to something like a one-shot, which would be the full track on just a single sample pad, or DJ mode where you're switching between one-shots of different tracks. So there's a few different reasons. Patterns give you a lot more variability and flexibility when it comes to a live performance. With a one-shot, it's going to just play straight through. There's no way you can change it. But here, you've got every single part of the track as an independent pattern. So a great idea for that kind of variability is to make as many alternate versions of every pattern you've got. So I had these 2 versions. So on this one, it's just the track playing straight through. On 3, I have that dropout at the end where the drums drop out to cue into the transition. Here I have one with no hi-hats, but it's the main part. And so that's always good to have. I use it at the end of the track to kind of add dynamics. And then let's say if we also made a dropout version of this one, which I'll show you how to do. Let's copy this over. So what I want is no drum at the start of this version. So we're gonna make an alternate of that. And then I would recommend having some sort of notebook or something like that to refer to know all of the different patterns you've got. But here on 4, we're gonna copy everything over. But then what we're gonna do is go into TR Rec mode, and I'm gonna find my drums. Here we go, and let's drop out all of those first ones. Drop out the snare. We'll put in the hi-hats here. Back on here, let's say. So drum dropouts are a huge one. You can do that at the start of the pattern like we did at 14, or you can do it at the end of the pattern at 3. All you're doing is just go into TR Rec mode and remove the drums either at the end, so let's say from 9 to 16, or remove them from 1 to 8. And I like to add some variation to the drum when you bring it back in. Hitting the reverb when the snare hits is always a nice one, but you can kind of do some cool stuff with hi-hat substeps and things like that. Another idea is you can include a shortened version or a tease of something you're about to bring in, like in 3. At the end of this pattern, I intro the flute that comes in at 4. So check this out. Here we go. And now the flute comes in. So it's kind of building up in intensity. I want to talk about pattern chaining versus playing patterns manually. So everything I'm doing right now was playing these patterns manually, but there is something called pattern chaining on the SP404, which you can create chains of patterns. So you set the path that the patterns are going to play through. So basically it's a song mode if you're familiar with Digitac. And you can also have multiple tracks, because if you look here, you have 16 pattern chains. So you could do a full set. If you are planning to do a lot of chromatic mode and you need patterns to change while you're playing in chromatic mode, this is where I would say pattern chaining is key, because you can set the path of the track and then you can just play on top of it and not have to worry. The thing with that though is you're getting locked back into a set pathway, which is what we didn't want when it came to patterns, because that's what one-shots do. Now, you still got some flexibility compared to a one-shot using pattern chaining, but if you do want to do a lot of that live jamming, switching between patterns on the fly, having a lot of variations that you can just kind of feel in the moment, then playing patterns manually is the way to go. And if you do want to have that flexibility of playing the patterns manually but also playing something live on top of it, that's where external instruments like a synthesizer or a guitar come in. You can easily just plug that into the SP. You also get an extra bus of effects thanks to the input effects. So you basically have 5, and depending on the routing, you could have this input sound go through the input effect, bus 1, bus 2, bus 3, and bus 4. So you can really get a lot of cool sounds from it. It is something that you have to kind of have your brain focus on 2 different things, because you need to change the patterns manually, maybe do effects for transitions and stuff, and also play. So pattern chaining can have its place. There's nothing wrong with pattern chaining. It's awesome. But if you do want that more performative, more improv style, playing it manually is the way to go. So the easiest way to do it is to just use effects. There are a lot of effects you can use that create some sort of feedback or rigging out that is very handy when you're switching between tracks. I really like SX Reverb, which I have on this filter and drive, and also Kodama, which is a resonant delay, I believe, but it can really do some awesome feedback if you hold it. I'll show you both in a moment. Then when it comes to non-FX types of transitions, there's creative ways to combine effects and your arrangement to kind of create that. So something I did going from that first idea in the live set, which was just a jam, I had Kodama on bus 1, and I was using chromatic mode, and then I brought the feedback up, and hear how it's ringing out? Then what I did, got out of chromatic mode, went into my pattern, and then I had the drum start, and while that's happening, I just slowly bring down the feedback and brought in the full track. So that's something you can do. So that's one way to use arrangement. Another way I did it was just do the reverb. So I just had this idea playing, and I slowly bring up the reverb, and I switch patterns, and there we go. And then we're into track 3. So one other thing you want to think about is adding a little breathing room or an area for you to reset and get things ready for further pattern tracks or things like that. And what I do is, going from this 3rd track, I transition to a one-shot, which is just a full track in one sample pattern. So the way I do it, I've got this track playing, so I'm gonna go into just the piano. I'll raise the reverb a little bit. And then what I did was I just used stopper to switch. I get out of pattern mode. I hold shift exit to stop the pattern. Then I just shut off the stopper and I turn on the next one. And you could automate a volume swell on this, anything like that. And now I've got the full track here on 13. So I've got a little breathing room to figure out my next effects. Maybe just take a break from all those pattern ideas and let my brain rest for a second. I can still do effects. And then you just kind of get a little space to get ready for the next track, maybe switch over because I got to move patterns to bank F, get effects ready, do all that type of stuff, and everything's ready now for that next track. But it doesn't have to be a full track on that one shot. You could have a little spoken word element, interlude track, you know, Boards of Canada. I think about them a lot when I'm thinking of this. Little vignettes, you know, short minute-long tracks or something. Just a little breathing room in your set so you can kind of get reset for all of the craziness of switching patterns. Maybe like in the next track, I'm using chromatic mode a lot. So it kind of gives me a moment to get my brain adjusted to thinking of performance rather than switching patterns and effects and things like that. Finally, the last thing for transitions is to really practice them. Just know them inside and out and prepare for your set so that you know what to do and how to move it. You really kind of have to have that muscle memory of going between all those buttons and combos and things like that so that it's as seamless as possible. All right, lastly, we're talking chromatic mode for live performance. So chromatic mode is just taking a single sound on a sample pad and hitting Shift 4. It transposes it across the keyboard. So now you have a keyboard of that sample. This works on any sample, even a long form sample. You can still do that. It actually can be kind of cool. But what this means is you can play and perform on top of a track or a pattern that's going on. This can look a little daunting, right? You can just see a bunch of numbers and they're just lit up, split across the keyboard in color and things like that. In my SP cheat sheet, I have a guide of all of the chord patterns you need to know to make chords. Like this is a major chord, this is a minor chord. You can just also, by hitting the value knob, switch between scales. Now, it's going to be dependent on what your source sample's note is. Let's say it's C. Everything's going to be in the key of C. So that would be C major, C minor, C Dorian, C Phrygian, all that type of stuff. So it helps to know the key if you want to use these. Especially if you're playing on top of a track. But one thing you can do to know the key immediately, but also have your own sound source that's yours and you created, is to use sound generator by hitting Shift record setting. You can choose the different sounds and they might sound really bright and obnoxious when you just press it. And you can see 9 is C, but on chromatic mode, if it's set on default, 5 is actually C. But make sure you hit what note you want, because whatever note you hit will be the one that exports when you export it, which is what we're going to do next. So we'll make this saw and we'll just export it to 3, hit record. Now we've got the saw, but what you're going to want to do is add a filter to treat it like a synth and then resample that so that it's in, but you can add effects. But once you've got that, you now have your own synth. And if you want a thicker sound, you can do that by merging samples together. You can merge up to 4 samples onto a single pad. And if you want to check out a full tutorial on merge sample and also get some synth recipes for making some really powerful lush synths like this on the SP404 using just the internal sound generator, I have a full tutorial right here that will show you all of that. I don't want to spend too much time on that here, but you can make your sounds and do all of that. And then you've got sounds that you've built. So let's get back to actually putting chromatic mode into your live sets. I've got the synth that I made using sound generator, and I like to add Kodama to it. And for this final track, I actually have a quarter delay. I start the track with just the pad. This is an ambient track. It's the closer for the live set. And then I switched to pattern 6, which has just the bass and the pad, because the final main element of the track is going to be the lead, and the lead I play in chromatic mode. And so this is where pattern chaining may come in more useful, because you could have more dynamics of the track changing while you play, but I'll show you how I navigate that with the manual switching. But so I have the track playing and I have an 8-bar loop, so it gives me a lot of time to trigger the next one, get out of pattern mode, hold the value knob so that when I trigger the synth that I want to go into chromatic mode, it doesn't make a noise. Then I go into chromatic mode and now I can see the pattern playing right here. And then I just wait till it loops back around where the bass is going to add in. Hopefully I remember this lead part. It's been a minute since I played the set. Then I just start. And I tease in this lead. I'm just doing it every first bar of the pattern. So again, I'm going to play it here. And then in the next loop, I'm not switching patterns, but I'm gonna play the full melody I've been teasing. And then what I did is, as you can see, I got out of chromatic mode very quickly and switched to actually the wrong pad. What I wanted to switch to was where I have a dropout of just the bass and the melody. I'm not saying you have to do it this way, but if you want to keep with playing patterns manually, that's the way to do it. Have some things pre-recorded that you can switch to so you can still add those dynamics, but then be ready to switch back. Okay, lastly, real quickly, let's just talk routing of your bus effects. When it comes to bus effects, I keep all of the melodic pads on bus 1, and then all of the drums I set to bus 2. So red for me is bus 1, blue is bus 2. And so this just allows me to have something like Kodama or SX Reverb on all of the melodic sounds of every pattern I'm playing. You have to be kind of creative with your bus effects because you're limited to 2 switchable ones quickly and then the 2 kind of master ones. So bus 2 I have set to type A, which means bus 1 goes into bus 2. So if I do something like DJ Looper on bus 2, it's going to affect bus 1 and bus 2, which I like, but you could also set it to run in parallel, which is type B. So let's go back to Golden Hour real quick and I'll just show you what that's gonna do. So when I use bus 2, it's only gonna do effects on the drums because that's the way I set all of my sample pads to be. Like I said, only the drums are on bus 2, all of the melodic sounds are on bus 1. So if you wanted to just do cool effects on the drums, that's the way to do it. You can have your own bus routing, and I'd love to hear how you route your effects for all of the sounds on your SP. Let me know in the comments. And then bus 3 and 4, I just have as my kind of SP404 special sauce, cassette sim and compressor. Cassette sim's adding some drive, and then compressor just zeros across. 0 is a magic number for the SP404 compressor. It seems counterintuitive, but it's not. It sounds amazing. Try it and let me know what you think. All right, so that's how to use pattern sequencing for more performative live sets. And adding in chromatic mode on top is just another way to get more variability, more flexibility, but also improv on top of it. You can add in new sounds that are not from your studio versions, and so it makes it a new version. The beauty of the SP404 is in its experimentation. So I've spent most of my time with the SP for live performances doing one-shots, chopping up stems from a track and playing them on top of a backing track, things like that. But I really wanted to check out what the pattern sequencer could do because I build all my tracks using the pattern sequencer. So I figured let's try that, let's use that. It is a little more challenging when it comes to transitions, but we talked about some ways you can incorporate effects and even arrangement to work in your favor for transitions. But I would definitely recommend you just check it out, see if it works for you. It does add a little more complication, a little more headache, but that's why I'd always recommend having a notebook or some sort of set guide that you can follow, that you can reference. But yeah, let me know in the comments, have you tried using the SP404 for live sets? What methods do you use? We've gone over, I think this is probably the 16th or 17th method. You can check out in my SP playlist all of the different ways to use the SP for live sets, but I think this might be my favorite. It's the most creative, it's the most connected to the SP. It's the most varied and flexible that you can do, at least in my opinion, but maybe I missed something. Let me know in the comments. And if you dug the video, if you got some value out of it, leave a like, subscribe if you haven't. I do live streams making beats with the SP and other hardware. So that's performing tracks using Pattern Sequencer. But if you want to see more about making the beats using the Pattern Sequencer, check out this video next. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.